guys, it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So today I have quite a few books that I would like to review for you guys, and I have a nice mix of books as well. So I have some adult, I have some young adult, I have some mystery thrillers, I have a horror, I have some romance, a general fiction. So I will also start off how I normally start, and that is work my way from my lowest rated all the way up to my highest rated. I actually don't have any DNFs. I don't have anything lower than a 3 stars. Everything that I've been picking up lately, I have been really enjoying, so that is a plus for me. So we will go ahead and get started. So the first book that I'm going to start with is We Were Never Here by Andrea Bartz. And this is one of my book of the month picks from last year, but this is supposed to be an adult mystery thriller novel. I think it's more a mystery novel, but this is following our main character by the name of Emily. At the beginning of the story, Emily is on vacation with her best friend Kristen, and they are over in Chile. And at the very start, we find out that Kristen has killed a backpacker that she brought back to her room. She claims that this backpacker tried to attack her. That's why she killed him. Well, we also find out that this same scenario took place last year on their other vacation in Cambodia. Emily is starting to realize that this same thing keeps happening to them, and she doesn't know if this is just bad luck for them or if this has something to do with Kristen. And so this story just follows them as they are trying to hide what happened over in Chile because the body has been discovered, and she is also trying to figure out if something more is going on with Kristen. And so I ended up rating this book overall a 3 stars. I just said that this is more of a mystery, but in all honesty, I don't even think this is more of a mystery because, again, a big part of this story is Emily trying to figure out what is going on with Kristen. But it is very clear, this author made it very clear that something is not right with Kristen. The only person who could not see that is our main character, Emily. It was to the point I found myself laughing because I'm just like, if Emily does not open up her eyes and see that something is going on with her friend, I'm gonna chuck this book across the room. I just could not believe it. I wish that this author had made things a little bit more subtle and even made the reader kind of question what was going on with Kristen, because it was plain as day that there was clearly not something right. And I just wish that it just was not so obvious. I also just wasn't really feeling how predictable this book was, and that you could pretty much tell where this book was going really early on in the story. Now, with that being said, I mean, there were some reveals, throughout that were, kind of surprising. But for the most part, you could tell where this plot was moving from. Also with this, I did listen to this one on audiobook, and I just felt like this narrator was so monotone. Like she just had no emotion in her voice whatsoever. Even when she was like finding things out, I just felt like she didn't have any emotion. Like she just was not shocked. I felt like the emotions that I had was more emotion than this audiobook narrator had. And I was like, I probably should have been the one narrating this book because this lady she's not doing it for me. But I mean, maybe I should have just read this physically and I would have been okay. But I just wish that lady would have had a little more in her voice. But I did like the crazy best friend trope. I like anything that has to do with just like crazy people. I don't know what that says about me, but I did like that. I did like learning some things about Kristen, and I like learning why people are the way that they are. So I did like that. And I did like where there was a moment in here where this author kind of had us questioning whether or not there was actually something wrong with Kristen, and maybe there was something wrong with Emily. I just wish that there was more of that and not just that little moment in the book. So, I mean, overall, I gave this story, like I said, a 3 stars. I just thought it was fine. It wasn't anything that blew me away. So the next book that I want to talk about is Faces in a Window by the author Oliver Seneca. And he actually reached out to me and sent me an e-copy in exchange for an honest review. And this is supposed to be an adult horror novel. And at the beginning of this story, we are following 2 new teachers by the name of Michelle and Ian. And they have started teaching at this middle school called St. Stephen's Catholic Middle School, I believe. And so at the start of the school year, they each start having like these really vivid and real like visions and nightmares. So Ian starts having these nightmares about like the school catching on fire and like these students like burning up in this fire and starting to like ask him for help. And then Michelle starts having these visions and nightmares of like this nun that's like after her. And so they start to like teach at the school and wondering what the heck is happening at the school and why these visions are happening to them. Yet when they get to the school, everybody is acting like everything is fine. But then when they start teaching at the school, they start to actually see the things take place while they're at school. So for example, Michelle is starting to see this nun walking around in the cafeteria, yet nobody else is starting to see this. And then while Ian is in the middle of teaching class, he's starting to see the little burnt up kids, yet nobody else is starting to see this. So the whole book is about them trying to figure out exactly what happened at this middle school and why it is that they are starting to have these visions, these nightmares, and why they are starting to actually see this stuff take place in real life. So I ended up rating this book a 3 stars. When the book opens up, it opens up with a scene that really hooks you and grabs you in, but then I do think that it kind of slows down after that. And a lot of the things that happen in this book, I don't necessarily think that they're like scary. I think they're more like I think I would classify them as like creepy. Yeah, like more on like the creepy side. I will say I'm not somebody that reads like a lot of horror. Maybe in like some of the mystery thriller books that I have, they might have like supernatural elements to them. But this is like one of the few horror books that I have read. So some of the elements in this, I would probably classify them more as creepy. And some of them do bring on the creep factor, especially when you're talking about like creepy little burnt up kids. And so then there are some parts in here, I think about a scene or two that has to deal with like some really creepy, nasty like insects. So that was a little nasty and got a little bit under my skin. So yeah, so no. So I mean, I did like the creepy scenes in here. I did I really liked the backstory over the school and actually what took place and why they ended up having like those visions and those nightmares. I really liked the character of Michelle, because what I have learned, you know, reading the few horror or like mystery thriller novels that I read, is that when stuff starts happening, no one seems concerned. No one seems to be questioning what is going on. And even in this story, there was a point that I felt like the character of Ian just decided that he was just gonna be like, you know what, this is fine, we're just gonna deal with this. And there was a point in here where Michelle was just like, no, like, what are we gonna do? Like, how are we gonna get rid of this? I need something to happen. Somebody needs to explain this to me. And you know what, I was here for that. I was here for Michelle, because Michelle, I feel like, was acting how I was acting. It was asking questions that I was asking, and was being as concerned as I feel like I would have been concerned. Because if I'm having those kind of visions and there's creepy nuns and children running around, I need answers. We need to figure this out. So I really appreciated Michelle. The only problems that I had was I kind of felt like the pacing, and it had like a really strong beginning and it had a really strong ending. It just kind of felt like somewhere in the middle with like the pacing is where it kind of lost me sometimes. So I ended up rating this book overall a 3 stars. So the next book that I want to talk about is Finlay, Donovan is Killing It by El Casimeno. And this is supposed to be another adult mystery novel. And so this is following our main character by the name of Finlay. she, I believe, is like recently divorced. She has 2 kids. She is a writer, and she is basically just trying to make it. She is struggling financially. She is trying to adjust to being basically a single mother, and she is just trying to get by day to day. And so one day, her and her agent is at this Panera. They are talking about her new book, and someone overhears her at this Panera talking about her next book. And this woman mistakenly thinks that Finlay is this hit woman and leaves her a note requesting that Finlay kills this woman's husband. And so the book kind of takes off from there, with Finlay trying to figure out whether or not she is going to complete this job. The woman leaves a nice amount of money left in this note, and Finlay is struggling financially, so she is trying to figure out whether or not she's going to do this. And so the book kind of takes off from there. I ended up rating this a 3 stars because in my mind, what I thought I was getting out of this is really not what I got out of this. Now, this is a really popular book here on BookTube, and I totally understand why. I have listened to so many like reviews over this, hence the reason why I even picked this up. But I still did not get what I thought I was gonna get. I thought this was gonna be more, and I don't know if this is gonna be spoilery or not, but I'm gonna say it. And I hope that I don't spoil this for anybody. But I thought this was going to be more of Finlay spending more time trying to figure out what she was going to do instead of the aftermath of it being done. I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to spoil anything. That's what I thought it was going to be. And so I just didn't really like where the story went, and I just felt like it was really, really over the top. And I was just like, what is this? And I guess I knew it was kind of gonna be over the top because there is a lot of humor in it, and some of it was funny. I really liked Finlay and her babysitter Vero's relationship. I really did enjoy that. I did think parts of this was funny. I just thought it was so over the top. I just didn't think how the plot was what I thought the plot was going to be. I just think my expectations of this book was not set properly, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I feel like a lot of people have mixed things to say about the second book, at least from the reviews that I have seen. From the people that I watch. So I'm not like in a rush at all to get to the second book, especially with how I feel with my 3-star rating for this one. So I don't know when I'll read that second book, but I'm kind of sad about it. Like I said, I thought this was fine. I thought this was a fun time. I definitely would recommend this. I love like the premise of this, and I was so excited to read it. I just was a little underwhelmed by it. I just thought it was so over the top, and I'm somebody that's here for over the top, but this just went in a direction that I did not like. The epilogue, I didn't really care for that because it just, I know there's like a second book, but I mean, it just left nothing to the imagination of what that second book was going to be about. I mean, it flat out told you like, this is what you were going to get in that second book. And I mean, I guess that's fine, but I don't know. I guess I would kind of want to guess a little bit. I don't know. I just felt like it just was, I don't know. I don't know what this just didn't give me what I wanted. And I'm a little sad about it. But this was fine. It was okay. Like I said, I would still recommend it, but it was a tiny bit of a letdown, but it was still a fun time. I still would recommend it. Even when I tell other people what it's about, people are still excited for it. So I mean, like I said, I would still recommend it. It was good. So then the next book that I have is Full Disclosure by Cameron Garrett. This is a book that I've had on my shelf for a long time, and I'm happy that I finally got to it. This is a young adult fiction romance, and so this follows our main character by the name of Simone, who is a high school junior, I believe. And our main character is HIV positive, and she was actually born HIV positive. And so in this book, she is, like I said, she's a high school junior. She is starting a new year at a new school because she had some issues at her previous school once people found out that she was HIV positive. So she is starting fresh at a new school. She has a new group of friends with two new girls as her best friends. And she, at this stage in her life, she is old enough now where she is wanting to be in a relationship. She is starting to inquire about sex. But with her being HIV positive, that comes with a whole new set of questions, a whole new set of responsibilities, and she is trying to navigate that. So we are following Simone as she is trying to embark on this new relationship that she is trying to have with her new crush by the name of Miles. And so one day while she is at school, she starts to receive these notes in her locker where someone has found out that she is HIV positive, and they are threatening to tell everyone about her secret, and she is trying to figure out what she needs to do. And I ended up rating this a 4 stars. I really enjoyed this. This opened up my eyes to something that I never thought about. I knew that people obviously could have that chance of being born with HIV positive depending on what happened to their parents, but I never really thought about how that would affect a child once they got older, and especially what they would have to deal with when they got to the point where they were starting to think about sex, and then how that really affects a child, and then how they would have to navigate that when they have to tell their partner. And so this book really does a good job with handling those discussions, and then how this teenager then has the weight of that on their shoulders, and then how they have to then break that news to their friends, and then how they have to deal with the reactions of telling their partner, of how they have to deal with, their friends, and then what happens when other people find out about it, and how hard that is for someone that young. And so this book just deals with all of that. And then not only that, but there's a lot of different representation, because our main character, she's Black, and then not only is she HIV positive, but she's also in the middle of trying to figure out what her actual sexual orientation is. She doesn't know if she's bi. She at her other school kind of sort of had a relationship with the girls, so she doesn't know if she is into girls. And then her other friends, she has a friend that's bi, she has a friend that's asexual. She is being raised by 2 fathers. So there's a lot of representation in this book. There's a lot of different conversations about race. There's just a lot of there's a lot wrapped up in this little book here. I really enjoyed this. I would highly recommend this book, especially if you are someone that doesn't know a lot about HIV. Me, I don't know a lot about it. The author does leave a lot of resources in the back of this book about where she did a lot of her research from. So I just really enjoyed it. I liked where this story went. The only thing that I did not like about this story and that did not seem believable to me is just how at parts of this, it just seemed like everybody was just accepting. Not that that's a problem. That's definitely okay. We want people to be accepting. It just seems like for this to be set in a high school and everybody is just so mature, I just don't see that happening. Not everybody is mature. I definitely expect our main character Simone to be mature, because I feel like when you're dealing with something like this, you kind of have to be when you're the one that's dealing with something like this and you have to be responsible, you definitely expect that person to have to grow up and be mature about it. But everybody else around them, you don't expect them to just accept everything that they're being told. So that was kind of like, I don't really think that would be the case. I don't think everybody would just take everything that you're saying at face value and just kind of go with the flow. So that was kind of hard for me to believe. But everything else, I really did enjoy. Like I said, there's resources in the back if you like this and enjoy it well enough to want to do your own additional research. That information is available to you, but I would highly recommend. And like I said, I did give this one a 4 stars. So then the next book that I have here is Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Booley, and this is supposed to be a young adult mystery novel. And I'm gonna be completely honest, like when I picked this up last year, this was strictly a cover buy. I honestly thought that this was like a fantasy book. Looked like a fantasy cover to me. And before I listened to this on audio, I still didn't know what this was about. For some reason, I just didn't crack open the flap and actually read what it was about. But I was shocked to know what this was about once I, kind of got into it. So this follows our main character by the name of Donis. She's 18 years old. She lives on a reservation, and she lives in this community where hockey is like a really big thing. When she was in high school, she was a really big hockey star. And at the start of this, she had decided that she was going to stay home her first year of college so that she can kind of help take care of her mom. One of her grandmothers is really sick, so she was going to stay home and try to take care of her family. Also in her community, she finds out that drugs have kind of taken over, and there is this particular drug, meth, that has been killing a lot of people in her community. So she ends up getting wrapped up in the FBI investigation so that they can find out who is making and distributing this meth so that she can help the people in her community. And so basically we are following Donis as she is helping out the FBI. She is learning some things about the people in her community. She's even learning some things about people that she thought was really close to her. And so I ended up rating this book a 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed learning about the culture and the history of Indigenous people. This is actually one of my first books where I'm getting some information about Indigenous people. Sad to say that, but it is. And I really enjoyed reading about it. I really enjoyed listening to this on audiobook to where I can actually hear the pronunciations of certain terms that was used in this book, and also hear it kind of like with their native tongue. And I liked learning about what it's like to live on a reservation, because again, it's something that I didn't know, and it was nice to learn about that. I also really liked Donis as a character because, like I said in the beginning, she decided that she wanted to stay home so that she could help her mother. She was worried about her grandmother, and that kind of showed how strong that Donis was as a character. She also was really into trying to help her community, and really she was invested on trying to figure out what was going on with this production of meth. And we find out pretty early on that one of her other family members was involved in this investigation. And so she was really concerned about what happened to that family member before she was involved. And so we kind of get some backstory on that. And so that also leads into like the whole mystery aspect, which I really enjoyed. I do kind of think at some points it was kind of predictable to me on where like the story was going, but I really enjoyed like where it went, just kind of like how that mystery part played out. I will say though, I think it took me just a little bit to get into the story. I thought it was a bit of a slow start. And while I do suggest listening to this on audiobook when it comes to like listening to them say like the terms and whatnot, I thought listening to the audiobook and not having like the physical book to follow along with, it was kind of confusing for me to kind of pick up everything that was going on as far as like her family with her, like her father and her mother, and then she had like a half brother and like that whole family tree. I was really confused at certain parts of this. So I would say, if you're going to listen to this on audiobook, maybe have the physical copy close by in case you get a little lost, because I know at some parts of this I got lost. That might just be me, but I kept getting lost, and it kept kind of like taking me out of the story because I had to keep rewinding to figure out what was happening. So, but other than that, I really enjoyed this. This does, in my opinion, deserve the hype that it is getting, and I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. So the first one is Black Girls Must Die Exhausted by Jane Allen. And this is an adult fiction. And so this is following our main character by the name of Tabitha. And at the beginning of this story, we find out that she is a Black woman. She's, I think in like her early to like mid 30s. And she is working at I believe it's a news station as a reporter. She is in a relationship. She's been in this relationship for almost 2 years. You know, she has a family. She, when I say family, she has, you know, her mother and her father family. She has her 2 best friends, and at the beginning of the story, she receives a diagnosis about herself that kind of makes her have to question what next steps she should take in her life. So it's basically us following Tabitha as she is reevaluating some of the things that she has to do in her life. And this is one of the books that I gave 5 stars, and I absolutely loved this book. And I think I ended up really loving this book because I just found it so relatable. Me as a Black woman in her 30s, I just found everything that she was going through to be relatable. This book is just dealing with everything that I feel like that I am going through right now in my life. You know, someone that is dealing with a career and, you know, wanting to put that first, and then you're also wanting to have a relationship. Don't have one of those though. And so you have a relationship and you have those pressures of wanting to start a family, but you also want to be successful, and people are putting these timelines on you, and it's like, but why do I have to have a timeline on me? Why can't I just let things happen naturally? And then, you know, you're dealing with your friendships, and then your friends are dealing with stuff, and you're trying to be there for your friends, but you also have stuff going on, and then you have your family issues, and it's just life, you know. And then not only are you dealing with everything in your life, then you have to deal with being a Black woman. You have to deal with your skin color. And unfortunately, that's just the thing that we're going to be dealing with for the rest of our life. So I feel like Tabitha is just dealing with everything that we're dealing with minus the relationship. So I just felt like I related to everything, just about, that she is going through in this book. I think that this is going to be like a trilogy because I do have the second book in this series. I don't remember what it's called though. Black Girls Must Be Magic. So I do have that, and I plan on reading that soon. But I really, really enjoy this, and I would highly recommend this because if you don't relate to everything in this, I feel like you would relate to something in this. And there is a character in here, Gretchen, that was Tabitha's grandmother's like best friend, and Gretchen was in here dropping all kind of knowledge on us, okay? And I was here for it. She was dropping all kind of little gems throughout this book, and I loved it. Like, I just loved everything about this book. This actually reminded me of the book Queenie that I read at the beginning of the year, and I just I can't say enough good things about this book, but I loved it. Pick this up if you have not. And the last book that I have that I wanted to talk about is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. And this is going to be another adult mystery novel, and I loved this one. I don't hear a lot of people talk about this one by Riley Sager. It's one of his older ones. I think it was like one of his first ones. I don't know if it was the first one, but I loved this book. Now, this is the third Riley Sager book that I have read. So I've read at this point Final Girls. I thought it was fine. And then I read Survive the Night. Wouldn't start there, but I freaking loved this one. So this one follows our main character by the name of Emma. And when she was younger, she went to this summer camp that was called Camp Nightingale. And when she was there, her bunkmates ended up going missing and no one knew what happened to them. And so years later, she ends up becoming a painter, and in her paintings, like, she would paint like the girls like in her paintings, but I guess would like hide them. So she was like, she always wondered exactly what happened, and she felt like she was responsible for them going missing. And so the owner of the camp decides that she wants to reopen the camp. She invites Emma to come back to teach painting. Emma reluctantly decides to go back. When she goes back to the camp, she ends up having to stay in that same cabin that she stayed in all those years ago. And some of the campers that she is staying with, they end up going missing. And it's kind of like she's reliving this all over again. And so she is trying to look for them. And she's also trying to figure out what happened to those other girls all those years ago. And so the story kind of like takes off from there. I freaking loved this book. I loved like everything about this. I loved the whole mystery of her trying to figure out what happened to the girls from, like, I think it was like 15 years ago. I loved her trying to figure out what happened to the girls from now. There's like this supernatural element to this. I just love, there's like, she keeps, throughout this whole book, I forget exactly like what she says, but she keeps like referencing like it's her fault, and you know, like I lied, and I'm like, girl, what did you lie about? Like, I just felt like I was in suspense like the whole time. Like, this is like the type of suspense that I want to be in the whole time I'm reading a book. Like, this is what I want, and boy, did I get that. Now, there were like a couple of moments where I felt like I kind of guessed like what was going on, but that's fine. Like, I feel like if I can kind of like figure out what's happening, as long as I'm entertained throughout the rest of the book, I'm fine with like guessing what happened. But this story is also told between the present and the past. So we're getting what happened 15 years ago leading up to what's going on now. And again, I love it when authors can do that, and I'm interested in both the past and the present, which I very much was, and I just loved it. Now, when I got done with this book, I would say right before the very end of this, I seriously was thinking that this was going to be like a solid 4 stars. I was like, this was a good 4-star book. When I read Final Girls, I gave that a 3 stars. I was like, that was fine. Even when I read Survive the Night, I wasn't as harsh as everybody else was about that book. I thought that book was fine. Again, I wouldn't start there. I thought that book was fine. When I got done with this one, I was like, well, I like this one way more than I like those other 2 books. But I literally was like, this is going to be a solid 4-star read. This was so good. Now, that ending scene, that final little twist sent me over the edge, okay? I about died. I died because I did not see it coming. I did not see it coming. And as soon as this was over, it was a 5 stars for me. It was 5 stars. I was done. I was through. I was like, Riley Sager did it for me with this book. I don't think any of his other books are probably going to be as good as this one, because that sent me over the edge. And then the more I sat and thought about it, the more angry I was getting with how upset I was with that ending. And it wasn't because I didn't like it. I liked it. It was just what happened. the reaction, when you can get a reaction like that out of me, and when I think about it, and then when I have to go and tell somebody about it, like I had to call my grandma and explain everything that happened in this book. And she didn't care. My grandma didn't care what happened. But I had to call her and tell her what happened to get it off my chest. That's a 5-star read, okay? So I had to get that off my chest. But that ending plot twist sent me over the edge. So this did it for me, okay? I really like this book. This one got a 5 stars for me. If you have not read The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager, you should. It was a good time. It was a fun time, and it kept me in suspense from beginning to end. Well, that is all that I have for you guys, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.